Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Barely Filtered. Today, I have a guest that, man, I have been stalking this woman down for, I feel, a few years now. She always pops up on my Instagram, which now that I'm thinking about it is kind of insulting that the algorithm thinks I need to see her content because it's all about helping people avoid finding themselves in traumatic relationships like ones with trauma bonds and narcissists. She knows what she's talking about because she was part of one of the most famous trauma bonds probably in our country, which was the Wolf of Wall Street. She was the wife of Jordan Belfort. He was the real life Wolf of Wall Street, and she was the real life Margot Robbie, who played her character in the movie. And she's got a lot to say about this. She's basically made a career breaking down this relationship that she had with this man. She was with him for almost 10 years, and she has 2 kids with him. She is now a licensed psychotherapist. She's an expert in trauma bonds, and she's a powerful advocate for healing and self-worth. She has lived through an intense, highly publicized marriage filled with high extremes and devastating lows. And she took this and she turned it into a really amazing career for herself where she's helping people avoid toxic relationships. She works one-on-one in a private practice, and she also just wrote a book called Run Like Hell. You can imagine what this might be about. She talks a little bit about it at the end, but there's a lot of key takeaways here. If you feel like you are maybe finding yourself in different versions of the same relationship, or you're creating trauma bonds with people, or maybe you're wondering if a relationship you had in the past was with a narcissist, this is the episode for you. So, wow, you have lived a lot of life and you look no older than like 33, which I'm learning now was the age you got divorced from Jordan, the Wolf of Wall Street.
Correct.
Okay, let's just rewind because I feel like a lot happened to get you to that point.
Yes.
Let's talk about what were you looking for in a relationship at that time when you fell in love with Jordan?
I think, so I was a young girl, 21, 22, living in New York City, modeling, making my own way in the world because I was raised by a single mom. So I became a model because it's pretty expensive to live, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to make money. And I think what I was looking for was love.
Yeah.
Just someone to love and spend the rest of my life with. And not that I didn't want a guy with money. Listen, that was the era of Wall Street and Pretty Women, right? We were taught, find the guy that's rich and cute and handsome. So I think I wanted the whole package. I just didn't know what I was exactly stepping into.
Right. I think that's interesting too, because I find myself kind of being like, well, I don't want a guy who doesn't have a good job, but I swear I'm not a gold digger. I don't know. There's a fine line between being a gold digger and just wanting somebody who's ambitious.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty sexy that he was also so admired by so many people. I'm sure that didn't hurt.
Yeah. And I was 22. He was 28. It wasn't like there was some crazy age difference between us. But I'm ambitious.
Right.
So I have no problem going for somebody that's ambitious.
Right. Okay. And then how did the relationship start? Did you know how sometimes people say that, like the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, it's like you have all your answers within the first 30 seconds of meeting somebody. Do you feel like there were things early on that you ignored?
Well, the way I met him was at the party, right, in the Hamptons, not knowing that, he was going to be my husband. And there were things at that party that I ignored. They were all on Quaaludes. Somebody exposed themselves to me, right? And so that should have been a sign because I ran out. But then our first date, he set up. He made somebody $15,000 in the stock market to set me up, unbeknownst to me. I just showed up at dinner.
Okay.
And so I just sat down unassuming, and he's like, I'm from Queens, I'm from Brooklyn, and we just really got along. And then we went on our first official date about 6 months later, and it was just crazy chemistry.
It was one of those, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Sometimes I say you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, he was a fun time.
Yes.
No matter how, horrible maybe he was in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, the way he became. But initially, he's charming, he's cute, he's handsome, he's successful, he's self-made, and he's crazy about me.
I know. Wow. I don't think any girl could walk away from that, right?
No,
you have to forgive your younger self for right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then bring me up to speed with when did things kind of start to take a turn?
Things took a turn quickly, as they do in trauma bonds, but I didn't know about red flags. Like, nobody was talking about this back then. So when we first started to date, he was like, if you don't marry me, I'm not going to date you. And I was like, what?
Like making ultimatums?
Yeah, like started to get very dominating, very intimidating, and did the same thing around children. If you don't have children, I'm not going to marry you.
How quickly did he start to do this?
6 months in.
Okay.
And so I was totally shocked by it. But then I rationalized it and I was like, he just loves me.
Mm-hmm. And when you say trauma bond, what do you mean by that?
So trauma bond meaning a toxic, dysfunctional relationship between two emotionally attached people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were emotionally attached. He was capable of being emotionally attached to somebody, even though he was a narcissist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Initially.
Okay. Do narcissists actually care about other people?
It depends on the type of narcissist, right? It runs on a spectrum. I mean, if we think about it, they're self-entitled. They're entitled. They're very self-absorbed. They're very into their image. So I think that if you're a good, shiny object that supports that image, they're crazy about you.
Until you don't support the image anymore.
Yeah, or until they're bored with you or they've had enough of you or...
So was he being faithful during this time?
Well, he wasn't, but I had no idea.
Right.
That he, like in the movie, they show that I got mad at him about women. That never happened.
Okay, because you didn't know.
Because I didn't know.
Right. I'm sure he loved that too. that you had no idea.
I had no idea.
Okay, so he starts demanding things of you and kind of making these ultimatums, and you are agreeing with it because you think that this is what you do for somebody that you love.
Correct.
You guys get married.
Correct.
And you do end up having children. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when did this demise start happening?
It started slowly because his drug addiction got so crazy.
Cocaine.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was mostly Quaaludes, but they did.
How does somebody get addicted to Quaaludes? Doesn't it make you like comatose?
Yeah. So, but they did cocaine in the movie because it was much more sensory to see. Because it's really kind of not that exciting just to see people pop 10 pills.
Yeah.
So and he did end up with cocaine at the end. But this domination started more, the intimidation, the control. And he was very verbally and emotionally abusive towards me. Because I would challenge him about his drug addiction a lot.
Right.
And that's when he would go nuts.
Right. I can imagine that if you try to take away the most important thing to him, which is his drug.
Yeah.
When you say emotional abuse, I'm just thinking for the listeners.
Yeah.
What is something early on that could help you detect somebody that might become emotionally abusive?
This is an interesting thing. So I was modeling at the time, and he was like, you don't need to model. Stay home. And I was like, but I'm making $3,000 a day, which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, that's nothing. Just stay home. And so under that guise of I'll take care of you.
Right.
But really that was, I want to control you.
Disempowering.
Yeah, very disempowering. Great word.
Interesting. I feel like what I've noticed, so I was it wasn't a relationship. It's what I thought was a relationship. I was hoping it would be with this guy who ended up having a lot of other girlfriends too. And I think he might be a little bit of a narcissist, although I feel like that word kind of gets thrown around a bunch.
Yeah.
But what I noticed from this guy was that he didn't really want a girl who had a lot of friends.
Right.
Did you feel like you were able to keep close friendships with other girls?
I was able to keep close friendships, but also remember he had like all of his cronies. So then I became good friends with the wives.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of like a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so he starts becoming emotionally abusive by systematically, slowly disempowering you.
Perfect way to say it. Perfect way. And he's still verbally abusive if I stand up to him, if I set a boundary.
Okay, so it's not okay with you setting a boundary.
Never, never. And I can't even say the way he spoke to me on this podcast.
And he's from Brooklyn, and
So, but it was,
We've
and
seen
it
the
was,
movie.
and it was so scary because I'd never witnessed rage before like that. I didn't grow up in a home with rage.
Right. You didn't have any kind of benchmark.
No.
You didn't know that men could be
I had
that
no
way at all.
idea.
And was your mom alive during this
Yes,
time? And
yes.
what did she think about this?
Well, when I first told her I was going to get married, she took me to lunch and she said, you don't have to do this.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
I feel like my parents would probably be like, oh, that sounds like a good deal for you. You should take it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so at this point when he's starting to get really emotionally abusive,
Yeah.
how old are your kids?
So I would say right from the time that they were born.
Okay.
Yeah, right away. There was always instances of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for those of us who have seen the movie, it sounds like when he starts getting in big trouble for, the things he's doing with his work and for drugs, it kind of simultaneously is when you guys break up. Is that how it was?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he got in trouble like a year into our relationship and he wasn't supposed to work anymore, but what he did is that he ran everything from behind the scenes, like The Godfather.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. And so he was working throughout the whole thing. But then what happened is I did leave him when he finally got arrested because I feared him.
Right.
And I knew once he got arrested, he couldn't say I was the drug addict. He couldn't take my kids from me because it was so clear he was a bad guy.
Right. And did he threaten to take the kids from you?
No, but I knew it was a possibility because in a trauma bond, there's a power imbalance. And usually the perpetrator will use that power imbalance to exploit or harm you.
Right. So they're going to take whatever's most important to you and use it against you.
Which was my children.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So you guys get divorced at this point.
Yes.
Is that something that he agreed to easily?
Yeah, because he was like working with the FBI. He had an ankle bracelet on. He didn't want that to happen at all. But I remember he took me to lunch once and I said, my cells have memory. Yeah. Even if I wanted to go back, I can't go back.
It's so true how that happens. Sometimes like when you get to a certain point of resentment, I mean, I've never experienced trauma like that, but there's a point of no return.
Right.
You just can't even if you wanted to.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah.
Which is probably our own system trying to protect us, right?
Yes.
From not making the same mistake over and over again.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you get divorced and then now here you are with this being, how many years of your life did this take up?
8.
Okay, so 8 years of your life. That was my timeline too with my marriage. Yeah. And now, like, how on earth do you go from that one, the biggest example of dysfunctional male-woman relationship to finding a functional relationship?
I know. Well, I was in therapy throughout my whole marriage, and I think that saved my life. And then right after I left him, I went to a place called the Karen Foundation, and they have a 5-day program called Breakthrough. And somebody said to me, if you don't go to this place, you're going to find the same exact guy. He's going to come in a different shape, a different form.
Why does that happen?
we have unconscious relational patterns. So I was like, that is not happening. And I went to the place and I learned a lot about myself. I learned about boundaries. I didn't know, this was a long time ago. Nobody was talking about this stuff. Right. I learned how to say no. I learned about my family of origin. And it really helped me, and I felt empowered because I believe education leads to empowerment.
Right.
And so then I'm ready to date, and I'm having a fun time dating after him. And I think it's more about learning to trust yourself.
Right. That's so interesting that you say that because I feel like when I started dating again, I didn't trust my ability to choose people. Correct. And because I did find myself choosing kind of different versions of the same person, like people who can't really be faithful or people who are really not emotionally available or ready to for a committed relationship.
Right.
And I feel like I've done a ton of work too. And sometimes it's like what you said, your cells, sometimes cognitively you can understand things. It's like, okay, his profile says open to short-term relationship. But I'm like, he's really hot. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, or I can change him. He's going to love me enough, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So you did have fun dating.
I did.
Okay, well that's good. Do you feel like you were holding on to any of that trauma though, or you just did this week course and it saved your life? What's the week course called again?
It's called Breakthrough at the Karen Foundation. Okay, I highly recommend it. They still have it. I had been in therapy again for like those whole entire 8 years. I was in therapy, and so I definitely wasn't healed at all, but I knew I was making the right decision for me and my kids. So there was just such a confidence in that. And I was young.
Right.
I was still young and stupid. I was 32.
Well, you went and got your doctor.
Then I went and got my master's and my
master's.
doctorate. I didn't go back to school till I was 38.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
That's really empowering. And
Yeah.
because who knows? I guess I could go back to school and do
You could do anything.
whatever.
That's right.
So you didn't go back to school for psychology until
I was 38.
You're 38.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And at that point, what got you interested in that?
Well, because I've always been interested in psychology, I was raised by a mother that was deeply psychological in the 70s and a true feminist. And I just believe that therapy saved my life. And I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And so and I'm a nerd. I love academics. And so I went back to school. Best decision I ever made.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're helping a lot of people. I've seen so many of your clips, and some of the things, like, you'd think women know, and men too, would know that, like, the signs to look out for in the beginning of a relationship. But a lot of us don't. We don't know it until we've gone through something really painful, and then we kind of do our own research after the fact.
Correct.
And then we're like diagnosing every person we've ever dated.
Yes, that's so true.
That's
so true.
So did you meet your husband? Now you're remarried. Did you meet him shortly after you were divorced?
I met him about 2 years later,
Oh, okay.
and he lived in California, and he said, you need to move your kids to California. And he was right. And so I picked up my kids. I was living in New York, and I wanted a fresh start for us. And we moved to California, and we lived with him. And 25 years later, it's still good.
Wow.
Yeah.
25 years later.
Yeah.
What is the secret to longevity and happiness?
Yeah, I think the secret is, well, first of all, he can hear me. I was so shocked when we had our first fight and I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, I hear that. I was like, what?
Yeah. It's like, why aren't you yelling at me?
No, yeah, I couldn't get over it. And we both have very similar values around family. And we were really determined to keep our family together no matter what. And listen, it has not been perfect.
Right.
We've had a bumpy road, but we're in a really beautiful place right now. And I don't know, we're just committed to reinvention of the relationship too. Like, I think you could be in a relationship and have like error 1, error 2, and error 3.
Right. Like, it doesn't have to be, because you're not the same person.
You're not. No.
It's kind of like falling in love with a different version of the person that you married.
Yeah, and he's super supportive of everything I do now. Because, I mean, listen, he has to listen to me talk about my ex on social media.
That's what I was I wanted to ask you that question because what's it like to have a career where you're constantly having to live in the past?
Yeah. The good thing is I don't feel any emotion about it at all.
Yeah.
But I really love that I get to exploit the most misogynistic movie on the planet and empower women.
Yeah.
There's a real joy in that.
Right. Well, do you like the movie?
Oh, I didn't mind the movie at all. Yeah, but it's, it's not very nice towards women. I mean, Margot Robbie was great.
Right.
And my character was great. It's just like a young girl who loved her husband and loved her kids. So but I like that I get to use the movie. And my husband understands what I'm doing.
Right. You're not doing it because you can't get over your ex.
No, I'm definitely over him.
Wait, what's he doing now?
He's living in Miami. So I live in Boca. He lives in Miami.
Yeah. Did you ever bump into him?
No, I haven't. I mean, at my daughter's wedding I did. But
yeah, you guys share children.
Yeah. And so he's remarried to a really lovely young girl. And I know. And he's fine. Like, we share, my daughter had a baby, so we have a grandson.
Okay.
And so we've always made a choice, Jordan and I, to get along for the kids.
Okay, well, that's nice.
Yeah. We've always gotten along.
Okay.
I mean, listen, sometimes he wants to kill me after everything I post. I'm like, you wrote a book, you made a movie, I get to do a 3-minute TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I feel you on that too, because I was not really quiet about my situation either.
Yeah.
But I mean, they shouldn't have done what they did.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we get along fine. And
okay, well, that's great. Okay, so I know that people who are listening are going to want just some key takeaways on what they can do to attract or intentionally find a relationship that is fulfilling, that can be long lasting, and also to avoid falling into the same trap that they've created over and over.
Well, I think it's really important that, like we were talking about in the beginning, that you understand yourself. You understand, did you have developmental trauma? Everybody has some form of neglect or abuse. How did that affect you? How does it affect the way you look at relationships? What are your attachment patterns, right? And do you see a pattern in your relationship? Go to therapy to uncover it. That doesn't mean you're always going to make the perfect choice.
Right.
But you really need to understand how you're wired for love.
Right. That's interesting. What would you say to somebody who says, like, putting something under a microscope won't change it? So even if I know, my dad never said he loves me, what's that going to do for me?
Well, what it will do for you is, like we were talking about, it'll illuminate the unconscious relational patterns that got laid down in your childhood. And it's important to know, if your dad left at 3 and you have fear of abandonment issues, that you run towards people that are toxic because you just want to be loved.
Right.
So you have to understand, and connect all the dots. And then you have to know what a pathological lover is.
Oh, what is a pathological lover?
So I don't call them just narcissists. I call them a pathological lover because they will use, harm, exploit, and betray anyone to get their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status.
Wow.
Right? So that means you're mentally unwell if you'll use people like that. And so, is there a lot of substance abuse? Do they get mad when you set a boundary? Can you have needs in the relationship? Do their words match their actions? I have a whole pathological lover checklist in my book, and I have tons of free assessments on my website, a trauma bond checklist.
Okay. Do they have to fit all the criteria?
No, they could, if they fit half, run like hell.
Yeah. It's like even a few of them.
Yeah. So it's good to learn about yourself and learn about the traits of pathological people.
Okay. Is there always love bombing?
Well, my experience has been that.
I kind of have always had that experience too.
Yeah.
Big gestures in the beginning.
Yes.
Mine have been a little bit more different. Like your pathological lovers seem to then expect a lot of you and offer and then give you, ultimatums and was really controlling. The people that I feel I have had a pattern of attracting are the people who come on very strong and then back off really fast. The emotionally
they pursue you and then distance.
Yeah, and they usually have weird mom relationships.
Oh, that's a key thing.
Yeah.
That's a key thing.
So ask them about their relationship with their mom. How is Jordan's relationship with his mom?
Not great.
Yeah.
I mean, I love his mom personally. Yeah. She's still alive. We're friends, but
well, you guys have something in common. You had to deal with him.
Yeah, it was. I can't say it was the best. And you bring up a great point. And my daughter's a therapist. She's 31.
Okay.
And she's happily married. And she's like, Mom, I felt like there was something wrong with me because my husband, my partner at the time, wasn't love bombing me.
Oh, yeah.
And she almost thought, what's wrong? And I was like, no, this is good.
This is good.
This is good. He's taking it a normal, slow, not intense.
Right. I do feel like there's an addiction to that fast pace, adrenaline roller coaster. And it almost makes everybody else after that relationship kind of feel boring and flat.
And that's very, very true. And so many people say that to me. And listen, it feels amazing to be adored. Mm-hmm. It does. And the dopamine and the oxytocin, it feels great. It's just not sustainable.
Right. I also feel like, what do you think about a man's, like we talk about dopamine and oxytocin.
Yeah.
The woman's attachment and the man's attachment.
Very different.
It's different. And I feel like the pace is different and what creates the attachment is different.
Yes.
Do you have any wisdom about that? About sex, early dating?
What you're saying is true, that we have that oxytocin, that bonding hormone. And I think once we do have sex with people, we do bond more than they do.
Right.
And that they have testosterone and makes them aggressive and dominant often. And definitely if a guy takes testosterone, that's a big red flag.
Okay.
Let me just say that now that we're talking about it. And so, they are different in how they're wired.
Yeah.
Just biologically.
Right. Do you believe that all men are able to be monogamous if they go to therapy and do the work? Or do you think some men are just, it's never going to happen?
I think some men, it's not for them.
It's not for them. And that's the ones you should run from.
Which again, and this is what I say when I work with those men. Then just be transparent.
Right. Oh, you work with the men too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just be transparent, but you're not transparent because you don't want her to have an educated decision.
Right.
And that's screwed up.
That's not fair if you're pulling the wool over their eyes.
Yeah.
You
if this is
promise
who you
something
are,
that you can't be.
Right. If this is who you are, own it. Mm-hmm. And then give her a choice.
Right. Okay. I love that. So I know that you just wrote a new book
Yes.
called Run Like Hell.
Yes.
I have an idea of what it's about. I haven't read it yet. Tell me a little bit, what was the inspiration for this book?
So the inspiration was when I was in my therapy room, all these smart, kind, beautiful women were coming to therapy and they were being betrayed, being abused, being financially abused, experiencing coercion. And I was like, what the hell is going on? We're not in the 1950s. So that's why I went back to the research to write about what a trauma bond is, the people in it, the symptoms you get, and how to heal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you heal with somebody who you have a trauma bond with?
No.
Okay, so you just
You
don't.
have to leave.
You have to leave.
You have to leave. You have to leave. And you can heal. It takes about 2 years, honestly. And people, I know.
I'm like, I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, it can take, and also depending on the length
Right.
of the relationship, right?
Right.
You know, the longer the length, the longer it's going to take. But you can heal. And actually, I think you can become stronger.
Right. I believe that.
Yeah.
I have heard before that it takes half the length of the relationship to heal. Do you believe that?
That could be a little extreme, I
yeah.
think. But
Do you think a man or a woman can move on more quickly, more safely, or it's the same?
I think it depends. Like
Yeah.
if the narcissistic person can usually move on quickly, but that doesn't mean they're going on to another good relationship.
Right.
They're going to do the same thing.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
going to do the same thing. So they can't change.
So, I mean, some of them can, but most of them don't. You have to want to change.
You have to want to change. Do you think
Yeah.
they have empathy? Can they empathize with someone else's emotion, or it's just all about them?
It's pretty much all about them. They can't have remorse, empathy, or compassion.
Even for their own children?
Maybe for their own children.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in Run Like Hell, do you talk about your relationship with
I
Jordan?
don't.
Or you talk
What
about
I-
your
Yeah, what I
current-
do is I take 4 trauma bonded couples
Okay.
and I tell the story of them in the beginning, and then I weave their stories throughout all the clinical material
Okay.
to make it come alive.
Oh, okay, all right. And
Yeah.
are these people that you have made up, or are they people?
The people I've worked with, and then I put all them together. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the stories are pretty outrageous. I wish they weren't true.
Really? Give us like a little sneak peek.
Yeah, so there's one guy in there who's having sex with 25 other people. Let me just
How
say that.
does one have time for that?
You'll read about it.
And where do you get that
would-
kind of
he would
sex drive?
Well, he was, I think, sexually abused as a child, but he sneaks out in the middle of the night. Just you'll read about it. That's the younger couple in my book.
How young?
They're in their 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yep. That feels like a trauma. Okay. So if you're in a trauma bond with somebody who is like a sexaholic like that,
Yeah.
then what are you bringing that makes you bond with someone like that? Somebody who,
Yeah, I think, like in my book, she doesn't know. The person didn't know. She just slowly uncovered it over time.
but I think you attract that person for a reason, right? Even if you don't know.
Yeah, this particular person had a lot of developmental trauma. Now,
Okay.
some people don't that enter into trauma bonds because anybody and everybody can.
Oh, okay. So you don't need to be damaged
No,
in some way to
not
be
at
susceptible.
all. Everybody does. Everybody can fall for it because you're falling for a con man.
Right. You're just being conned. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's really important information because I feel like I actually have a guy, we call him the con man on the podcast. Last year, I was dating this guy who, oh my God, he fit the mold. He actually had a wife and kids, but was on a dating app. That's where I met him, pretending to be single. And I dated him
geez.
for like 2 months. And he would make plans and then cancel them and then plan trips and cancel them. And I ended up talking to his wife in the end, and like he was doing the same thing to her. And she actually met him when he was married to somebody else.
Yeah, there you go.
And I was like, but why'd you marry him? Then she was like, oh, I thought he had changed,
Yeah,
I thought
but
that I could be the one to change him.
Yeah, and so everybody and anybody can fall for it. And that's why I wrote my book, is because to educate everybody to not fall for these con men.
Right.
And to not blame themselves. Like,
Right.
you're not responsible for that guy lying to you.
Right. But I do think after that situation, I was like, I can't be trusted to choose my own partner. And like people would say that to me kind of jokingly, but like my sisters and my parents, they'd be like, all right, you're fired. You're not, we're going to pick the next one.
After you read Run Like Hell, you will be so well primed to choose a good partner. I promise.
Okay. I think I'm getting better. Slowly but
Good.
surely I'm starting to, just trust myself. And I
Good.
for every, one guy like that I've met, you meet a lot of good
Yes,
people too. And I
yes.
think that That's why dating multiple people, I think, is important because you can get a taste of a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean you have to be sleeping with all of them, but
Right.
it's a process. So did you date a lot of people in those 2 years between Jordan and you?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and you were having fun with it. So that's good. Okay, well, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, The Real Dr. Nadine, or the Wild West of social media, TikTok.
I know. What's happening with that?
It's so crazy. Dr. Nay, LMFT. But go to my website, drnay.com, because I have so many free resources. And I just launched also a trauma bond recovery community.
Oh, nice.
So you can find out about that on there. And there's just so much information to help.
Can people work one-on-one with you?
Yes, I have a big private practice.
Okay, and you still do that. How do you have time for everything? My God.
My kids are grown.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
that is nice. I don't have that yet.
That's why, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much. And then don't forget also to check out her book, Run Like Hell. And and we can work one-on-one with you. I might be hitting you up for that. I actually have a friend who has worked with you.
Oh,
I'll
good.
name her later. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening, everybody. And thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.